age, and I've talked to college graduates who are finding it impossible to find work commensurate with their education. Meanwhile, while the middle class of this country disappears, while millions and millions of people are working longer hours for lower wages, while single moms are trying to figure out how they can bring in enough income, how they can afford childcare for their children, almost all of the new income and wealth created in America today is going to the top 1%. Saying loudly and clearly, enough is enough. This great country of ours and our government have got to represent all of the people and not just a handful of billionaires. A few words about our campaign, which is a very different type of campaign than other candidates, Republicans or Democrats, are running. When I began this campaign about 8 months ago, it's fair to say that we were at about 3% in the polls. It's fair to say that we had no political organization, we had no money, and much of the media considered our campaign a fringe candidacy. Bernie Sanders combs his hair very nicely. Well-dressed candidate, but you know, not really going to go very far in this campaign. And then some of the experts said something which is, I think has a lot of truth to it. They said, look, if you are going to run a national campaign in today's world, you need to raise tens and tens of millions of dollars. That's the reality if you're going to run a serious campaign. And the only way, they said, that you can raise that money is to have a super PAC and go to the millionaires and billionaires and beg for money. That's what they said. In most cases, this is the way politics work. People don't do meetings like this. What they do is spend their lives going to mansions owned by millionaires, sitting down with very, very wealthy people, leaving the house with a few $1 million, and putting ads on TV. That's all modern campaign. But we decided to do something very different. I do not represent the interests of the billionaire class of corporate America. A very different way. And we said to the working families of this country, to the middle class, we need a political revolution in this country, and you're going to have to help us make that happen. You don't have to. This is going to happen. This is really amazing and something I would not have dreamed I would be able to tell you 8 months after we began this campaign. What happened is that over the last 8 months, over 2.3 million individual contributions have come into our campaign. is yes, you know what? You can run a winning campaign without begging billionaires for money. I'm very proud that we have some hundreds of thousands of volunteers, including many thousands here in Nevada. I want to thank, we have a great volunteer base here in Nevada. We personally thank all of you who are helping out in the campaign. What this campaign is about is understanding some very important points that are not often seen on TV or discussed in the media. And that is that right now, no president, not Bernie Sanders or anybody else, will be able to transform our country, to do the things that the middle class and working families of this country need, unless we have a political revolution, unless millions of people get involved in the political process in a way that we have never seen before. Is that Wall Street, in corporate America, and the Koch brothers, and Sheldon Adelson, and all of these really wealthy guys, they are so powerful in controlling the economic and political life of this country that we cannot defeat them unless millions of people stand together. And that's chooses not to focus on the real issues impacting working people. But what we are doing in this campaign, and the reason I think we are seeing so much success, so many large crowds, we have now spoken in this campaign to over 400,000 people who have come out to our rallies. Is that people want to be treated as intelligent human beings. They want to hear a real discussion of real issues and how we can go forward in transforming our country. When I talk about the real issues facing Americans, wealthiest people, not a lot of people, own more wealth than the bottom half of the American people. Today in America, one family, the Walton family of Vermont, owns more wealth than the bottom 40%. In Vermont and all over this country, in order to make a living, in order to bring in enough money or get some health insurance, people are working incredibly long hours. I don't know how many of you know this, but we in the United States work the longest hours of any people in the industrialized world. Japanese are very hard-working people. We work now longer hours than the Japanese. And yet, despite the sweat and the toil and the stress that millions of families are living under because they're working so hard, husbands don't see wives, mothers don't see their kids because everybody's out working. At the end of the day, 58% of all new income generated in America today is going to the top 1%. Continues to disappear. So what we have got to do together is to create an economy that works for working families, not just billionaires. Once a month, the federal government publishes an unemployment report. Official unemployment nationally is about 5%. But there's another report that doesn't get a lot of attention. And that includes people who have given up looking for work and people who are working part-time and they want to work full-time. That number is close to 10%. And here's something else that is never discussed. A couple of months ago, I asked some economists to do a study for me. And I asked them to tell me what real youth unemployment was in this country for young people who graduated high school, didn't drop out, graduated high school. This is what they reported back. For white kids between 17 and 20, real unemployment and underemployment was 33%. For Latino kids, 36%. For African American kids, 51%. Now, if there's anybody in this room who does not see a connection between this outrageously high rate of youth unemployment and the fact that shamefully we have more people in jail than any other country on earth, if you don't see that connection, you are missing a significant point. I'll tell you what I think we have got to do. And that is we have got to invest in jobs and education for our young people, not more jail. make sure that people who are arrested for non-violent crimes do not spend time in jail. We've got to make sure that people who are in jail, when they are released, have the education and the jobs and the opportunity to make it. A lot of work that has to be done. I just want to do some of the issues and aspects of the criminal justice reform that I think needs to happen. Now, when you talk about what goes on in America, there's one simple fact that is so obvious, everybody knows about it, but we don't talk about it. And that is the reason that people are working incredibly long hours is that wages in this country are too damn low. Minimum wage of $7.25 an hour is a starvation wage. To raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. And when we talk about fair wages, I hope that every man in this room will stand with the women and fight for pay equity. Rational economic reason why women are making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. That's just old-fashioned sexism, and we're going to change. The United States campaign finance system has become corrupt, and American democracy is being undermined. Today in America, most of the campaigns, most of the candidates are receiving more support from super PACs funded by millionaires and millionaires than they are from their own fundraising efforts. You know, the people of Iowa think they have the first caucus in the country. They're wrong. The first caucus was held here in Nevada several months ago by Sheldon Adelson. What Adelson did is invite a number of Republicans to tell him what they will do for him. And if they say the right words, they will get tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in campaign contributions. The Koch brothers and a few of their friends, multi-billionaires, are prepared to spend $900 million on this campaign. Brothers and sisters, this is not democracy, this is oligarchy, and we are not going to allow that. It says that in the United States of America, every public college and university will be tuition free. but it is actually much more important than that, and I'll tell you what. I grew up in a family that never had a lot of money. My parents didn't go to college. And the people that my family associated with also never went to college, and that's kind of the way life is. So you've got millions of kids today in the 6th grade and the 7th grade whose parents never went to college. We don't know anybody whose parents went to college and who don't believe that they will ever go to college. And what I want those kids to know, and I want their teachers and their parents to know, that if they study hard, if they take school seriously, yes, regardless of the income of their families, they will be able to go to college. With their hands, they want to be electricians, plumbers, carpenters. They also deserve the opportunity to learn those skills. In terms of higher education, we have another absurdity. And that is we've got millions of people, and my guess is some in this room, who are struggling with outrageously high student debt. People all over this country, just a few stories, just to give you an example about how absurd and dangerous this situation is. A couple of years ago, I had a meeting in Vermont on this issue. A young woman comes to the meeting and she says, you know, I wanted to go to medical school, and I did. I wanted to practice primary care with low-income people, which is exactly what we need to see happen now, and that's what she's doing. And she said, in a sense, the price that I have to pay, the penalty I have to pay for being a doctor treating poor people is that I'm $300,000 in debt. And then I was in Iowa a couple of months ago, and I said that, and at the end of the meeting, a woman comes up to me and she says, $300,000 in debt. I just graduated dental school of $400,000. And all over this country, people are graduating college or leaving college, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in debt, paying interest rates of 6, 8, 10%. Okay? In my view, if you can refinance your home today for 2, 3%, why the hell would pay 8 or 10%? Will allow people with student debt to refinance at the lowest interest rates they can find and not be stuck forever with high interest rates. Now, I've been criticized by some who said, well, you know, Bernie, it's a nice idea, free public college and lowering student debt. That's really nice, but that's expensive. And they're right, it is expensive. It will cost us about $70 million a year. And you know what we're going to pay for that? We're going to pay for that by a tax on Wall Street speculation. Wall Street's greed and illegal behavior helped destroy this economy. The taxpayers of this country bailed them out. Now it is their time to help the middle class. Leaving this planet to our kids and our grandchildren in a way that is healthy and is palatable. I am on both the Senate Environmental Committee and the Energy Committee. I have talked to scientists all over the world. The debate is over. Climate change is real. Devastating problems throughout the world. In my view, Pope Francis is right when he recently said that we are moving in a suicidal direction said, you know what? Climate change is real. We've got to do something about it. On that day, that candidate will lose his funding, her funding from the Koch brothers and the fossil fuel industry. So I say to my Republican colleagues, I understand that's a tough issue for you, but you've got to be looking. You've got to be looking at the planet. You're going to be leaving your kids and your grandchildren. Have the guts to stand up to the fossil fuel industry. What this campaign is about, what I mean by a political revolution, is not just involving millions of people in the political process, but it's also thinking big. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world, but very few people know that because almost all of the wealth and new income is going to the people on top. But because we are the wealthiest country in the history of the world, if we get our priorities right, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. Right now, today, there is one major country on earth, one industrialized country, that does not guarantee health care to every man, woman, and child as a right. You're living in that country. Now, in my view, the Affordable Care Act has done some important things. It has provided health insurance to some 17 million people worldwide. It has ended the obscenity called pre-existing conditions. It's done some other good things. But at the end of the day, in America today, 29 million people have zero health insurance. Millions more, including many in this room, are underinsured with high deductibles and high co-payments. So you got millions of people who are sitting with $5,000 deductible. They can't afford to go to the doctor because they don't have enough money to do it. All right? Meanwhile, we end up spending far more per capita on healthcare than the people of any other nation. We spend almost 3 times per person what the British do, who guarantee healthcare for all their people. We're spending 50% more than what the French are doing, guaranteeing healthcare for all their people. Spending much more than the Canadians, guaranteeing healthcare for all their people. So I think maybe it is time to say loudly and clearly that in this country we are going to guarantee health care to every man. And by the way, when we do that, we're going to end the absurdity of the people in the United States paying by far the highest prices for prescription drugs of any people. When we talk about America today, it is important to understand, especially now in the holiday season when families are coming together, that there are 11 million people in this country who are undocumented. And many of those people are living in fear. Many of those people are worried about being deported. Many kids are worried about seeing their parents being deported. In my strong view, this country and our Congress must pass comprehensive immigration reform. And we must move for In this world today, as everybody knows, we are living in a very crazy world and a very, very dangerous world. We turn on the TV and we see disgusting things that turn our stomachs. And I think many of us recognize that this group called ISIS is a barbaric organization and that it has got to be destroyed. But in terms of foreign policy, in terms of military policy, it is not good enough for us to be quote-unquote tough. It is not good enough for politicians to be ranting and raving about how strong they are, especially when it will be somebody else's kids going to the We are the wealthiest nation in the history of be all white or black